Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to another episode of Tea and Coffee with Paula and
Jay, what's the day of the week? The date of the
Wednesday,
week.
well, the 17th. I
Yeah.
get to cheat. I have my laptop in front of me. It's the
There you
17th.
go. Good morning. And that's, you don't have to add that. I'm just playing with you this morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a wonderful Wednesday. We got Bruce Pardy coming back for part 2 of his Constitution draft. We're going to go from 7 and on. So if you got your copy sitting there, get ready. We're going to be going through it again. Good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I am stuffed full of chili and dessert, thanks to the lovely chili and dessert cook-off in Breton. So here, my son got me a wonderful mug, Village of Breton. It was a great event. It was a great community event. Like, we pulled in, it started like 4:30. We pulled in at 5 and the parking lot was already full. And it's a big parking lot for the community in the area. And it was great. It was great to see all our local vendors. Part with Hooves was there, and lots of others. The APP was there. So was Forever Canada sitting right next to them. I put them at the
How was the
table.
lineup?
There were 2 ladies sitting at the table ready to provide information fast.
That sounds about right. And then
Yeah.
APP, yes, they're always at the event. So they were outside or inside? Or?
Inside.
Good.
Yeah, no, because there was space for them. They sat there. But overall, it was a great event. Thank you for Breton Village to be putting it on. Deanna, I'm sure, was organized. The mayor was there. Our Breton mayor was there. But it was great. It was a great event. Great to see the community. And yeah.
It's the mayor was there who was working the pharmacy. Our mayor is a pharmacist.
She works. Yeah, she works in the pharmacy. But no, it was good and the great food to be had. Like, I voted, you had to do best all round, spiciest, most unique chili, and then best dessert, sweetest dessert. Got to vote, and oh no, we came back and our tummies full.
Very good. Well, thanks for that update from Breton, and congratulations to the Village of Breton for putting on good events.
Yeah.
And seeing the community. And we're getting ready for election time.
Yep, that's right. Got
starting
to
to
chat
right.
to some people. I got to running to be mayor of Thorsby, so that was pretty
Very cool. That's where our police station is right now.
Yes, correct.
They're renovating the police station here, and we have to go all the way there to do things like get our criminal record checks so we can run for office. But it's very cool. Okay, so for the update on the property, what's our next project? What are we doing with the homestead?
It's you, really. It's what are you doing next?
Well, let's ask the audience. Do we want the generator? Do we want the septic? Or do we want the power in the shelter? And then the last one is the underheat diesel heating.
Yeah, I don't know. I think generator, let's get that done.
Let's
that's
pluralizes it. Absolutely, we can get that done. I think that's probably best because I think it's the biggest priority out of all of them right now as we're getting through September.
Yeah.
Okay. The vote is in. Paula has decided with her full belly that the Generac generator is the next to be installed. So stay tuned.
Yep.
I know you guys care.
I know you care.
Okay. So it's another long, big news day for us. Lots more going on. I was trying to stay on top of things. One of the bigger things we'll get to at the end, but somebody's leaving Canada.
Oh no, what a shame.
We'll get into that as well. And here we go. Let's get started. A little bit early. We're kind of rushing through things, but I do not want to miss any of the news for you today. Because there's more than just Charlie Kirk issues going on now. Things are kind of getting crazy out there. I think one of the terms we used in our backstage was what was it now? It's getting crazy. It's crazy. Something along those lines. Sorry, I'm waking up. I haven't sipped my coffee yet. Oh, by the way, there's a fresh coffee this morning. This is not a day old coffee. I know you love that. All right, so you enjoy your tea. What do you guys drink? Tea or coffee? If there's anybody out there that mixes it, let me know. Have a tea and coffee. Ilho or Omar? Ilan Omar. Hypocrite, moron. There's a lot of words for this lady. She loves her brother. We know this. But she's now posting, and she's been community noted as well, to those claiming that they're for free speech while punishing and silencing those that or exercising that right, you are not pro free speech. So what she's referring to are a bunch of celebrations for the death
Mhm.
of Kirk, because that's the only one that are getting punished. And she's also talking about how there is consequences to that because employers are taking action.
Mm.
It's not the government. Nobody's being arrested.
Correct.
It's employers are taking action against employees who come out and make some vile statements. And this is a shock to her suddenly. But if you look back from March 18th, 2022, he states, does the First Amendment protect your freedom of speech? Yes, we all
Yeah.
agree. Does it protect you from being shamed or shunned by others? No.
Correct.
Oh, a little bit of a change in attitude there. Bottom line, your opinions have consequences like everything else in life. Correct. You have the
Yeah.
freedom of speech to look like a moron. You have the freedom of speech to cause problems.
Mhm.
Your freedom of speech goes it's there to protect things that people don't like. But by its very nature, freedom of speech means it's something you're not going to like.
Yeah.
And employers also have their freedom of employment.
Yeah, exactly.
They
They
have
have
the
it.
ability to hire and fire. But what some of these people are doing now is they are trying to use the First Amendment as a shield to be able to say the most vile and disgusting things that they can. Celebrating a murder is right up there, right up there. And I don't think she really believes that freedom of speech could be used as a shield for things like racism, because that is still freedom of speech, but still vile and not accepted in society, and there's consequences for it. So it's a big time hypocrite. So my post here is, oh brother, unintended. Ilhan, you are lying. Were you lying then or are you lying now? My famous little line.
Yeah.
When you have a contradiction. No one is being silenced for his speech. They're being rejected for it. That's what's happening here.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like if she is so confident that the freedom of speech covers things, we'll say the most vile, disgusting things in the entire world. She does pretty much, but she doesn't go across the line, because there's even a line for her. She could be kicked out of the house for crossing lines. If she became a full-blown racist and anti-Semite or something like
Yeah.
that, you'd be kicked out of there too. There'd be consequences. But for the people who are being fired and learning that there's consequences, I'm so sorry. But you guys are the ones that kind of created that environment.
And used it as a tool against others.
Correct. And employers are now being super sensitive because of what you put them through, that they will take measures and end relationships. All the way to Ben and Jerry. Jerry of Ben and Jerry Ice Cream has now left the company because he doesn't like the stance that he's not able to express his opinions that harm the brand in some way, because that's a part of his $300 million purchase agreement when they bought the brand off of him. There's I just learned this morning, they have a board of social issues there. And that board, which he was part of, determines which social issues the ice cream will be able to stand on. And the Israel-Palestine war was not approved by the Board of Social Issues, contrary to his desire to.
Right.
So he's now left the company that he helped start, co-found, his name's still on the ice cream, in order to go ahead and pick a side and go ahead and share his opinion on that one. So whether you're an employee, because employers are getting boycotted when they act silly, employees are being fired, even co-founders with their name on the ice cream are leaving because they don't have the ability to speak vilely and still collect paychecks. So this goes across the board.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good lesson for a lot of people. Like this stuff, if you said it on a show, that would be your last show.
Yeah, for sure.
Or if I said it on a show, that'd be our last show.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be just because we wouldn't be welcome. Our audience would reject it. And our audience would say, absolutely not. That's a limit. We love you guys, your tea and coffee, but you guys crossed the line. And we would be rejected by our audience. This isn't a shield to be vile.
Yep, agreed.
So Ilhan, sorry about that. And the old brother, pun intended, if you're not aware, there's a lot of rumors and paperwork and documents and reporting that she married her brother. And it sounds like it was in order to sponsor him to come to the country. But she was able to come as a refugee. And again, these are reporting. Then she married her brother and brought him over. I I don't know if it was consummated or not, but that's what the paperwork shows. So, yeah, oh brother, pun intended. Jason Kenney loves to inject himself into the news for the wrong reasons again. This guy, he should just build a ranch and raise some cattle and become dependent on his hard work, because then he would change his opinion that he's out there doing.
Yes.
Because clearly this guy doesn't have to work hard for his dollars anymore, because his current opinion again is having the question of independence is a divisive thing.
Yeah. It's not.
So Keith Wilson here, our bud, the post, Jason Kenney warns of Alberta sovereignty referendum, but has no recommendation and no strategy on how Alberta can be treated fairly by Canada. And this is sad because Jason Kenney did his town halls, and
Yeah.
he went around for the, I think it was a fair deal panels. So he's fully aware of what Alberta thinks. But here he is. Jason Kenney warns of Alberta. Oh, that's Keith Wilson. Jason Kenney warns of deeply divisive impact on sovereignty referendum in Alberta. That itself is divisive. By saying it's divisive, you're making it divisive. He could be very unifying. He could be saying Canada has messed up Alberta's ability to be prosperous. I know, because I did the panels as well. I was fighting for fair deals as well. Like, he can take the same similar approach that Danielle Smith is taking right now, and is saying, look, we're fighting for fairness. And he, of all people, would have a good soapbox for that.
Yep.
And say, hey, look, I was trying to do that too, and I do agree that Alberta should be treated fairly. I, of all people, sat down with Albertans and understand this. But no, what is he doing? Being divisive by calling it divisive and not contributing to the conversation. So my question was, so Jason Kenney, the same man that divided his party and lost support from his own members, and that was around COVID and passports and other things that he wavered on, is now concerned with division. Why is he so afraid of the people of Alberta having a vote? If he was so confident Albertans didn't want to separate, he wouldn't be speaking out. He knows that he knows what the rest of us knows. There's a high likelihood that Albertans will vote to leave Canada. Now, the real questions are, what will Kenney lose if Alberta separates? And what is he really protecting?
Yeah.
After all, he was a former MP, so federal level, and Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship of Canada, making him part of the globalist club before trying to destroy Alberta's premier. Sus. So what does he have to lose? Is he going to lose relationships with the federal government, the globalists? Like, what is he trying to protect here? Like, why is he literally coming out of the shadows, taking the wrong side of the issue? And I don't mean he has to be for separation. I mean, he could be for fairness. He could be taking that side of the issue, be for fairness and not calling it division. And but what is he trying to protect?
No, mate. All will be revealed as longer it goes on. Or again, he's just maybe injecting himself into conversation.
Is that a pun intended? Because he was a COVID one. Oh boy, you're on fire today. Yep. So of course, this issue is going to have people for and against. But I didn't see Kenney saying, "Well, Thomas, whatever his name, Lusakic, is a divider," because he's the one that has the current petition out there.
Yep.
And that petition is still a yes/no. And that petition, if it was successful and brought the question forward, would still be a divisive yes/no. But I don't see Kenney, complaining about him.
Correct.
He's talking about the one that's most likely to be far more successful, which will be the APP petition, which is a constitutional one. And we're going to get into that in a second here.
And this comment here from Pietro, Kenney is a very strong federalist.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I think anybody that became an MP, worked in that system, went to Ottawa, they're definitely going to be leaning towards federalist and even loyalist towards monarchy. I don't hear them talking about, other than Quebec provincial level, I don't hear them talking about not being loyal to the king and the monarchy. But absolutely. And I think there's more to it than that, Pedro. I think that there's some sort of future for him or some sort of loss if Alberta separates, because he's coming up pretty hard the wrong way for a politician. Speaking of Thomas Lusakic, he's blocked me. This happened yesterday.
Mm,
I'm so heartbroken. I'm gonna go have to touch the grass later because this has really rocked my world. This is so
yeah.
sad.
Bad
Um,
news on a Wednesday morning.
yeah, I'm gonna get that little violin going because that's exactly how I feel about this. Yeah, he's blocked me, so let's just go ahead and jump into his post. So Sakic, blocking me just means I can't comment on your stuff, but I can still see your stuff. And it's too bad because he did, just firm. Am I blocked? Yeah, there I am. Um, and that happened yesterday because this was a post I did yesterday. Um, and originally I reached out to him and have him on a show, and he responded in the positive, and he said, "Yeah, let me check it out. I'll get back to you by the end of the day." We went and had some back and forth about where it was going to be Edmonton, and then he went silent. I guess he was dealing with those long lineups of signatures or something. But he went silent. Maybe perused my stream, my timeline, and saw that I am open to conversations that he doesn't like. So in either case, he made this post and he goes, it's a movement when there are 97 Forever Canada petition signing locations on Sunday evening. And he goes on about a former MP, again, with those MPs who definitely want Federalist. That's what they are. But if you take a look at his pictures, there's something missing. People signing. And if you look at his locations, there's something really missing. Rural. They're all in
Yeah.
just cities and towns, like large cities and towns. There's some around them, and a whole bunch of them in Calgary. So he's still working hard. Still working hard. I'll give him credit. Give credit where credit's due. Put in an effort. But this is probably what got me blocked. Was my response to him. Dear Thomas, I want to be nice and polite. You may have had 97 locations to sign on Sunday, but that's because you have to. No one in the pictures are signing. There are no lineups, and I think you already got all the low-hanging fruit. Prove me wrong. Will you release your numbers? Which he hasn't. Even the media has been asking if there's numbers from him, and he's not providing them right now. I think you made some mistakes. I'm trying to be friendly here. Get him to understand where he went wrong with this. You should have secured the support first. You are still canvassing while the Alberta Prosperity Project will be collecting. Big strategic difference. And what I mean by that is the APP already has the required number of people willing to sign. They've already collected all that information. They now need to just go collect a signature. They're not going to be asking people get in line to provide a signature or try and convince people. They've already got well over 200,000 people ready to go when they only need 177,000. So they'll be collecting, not canvassing, which is very different. Also, you decided to do a policy question instead of a constitutional one, making it non-binding and will change nothing. So this is something a lot of the people following him should understand.
Exactly.
There was an option when he filled out the paperwork that said, is this going to be a policy question or a constitutional question? And he checked off policy, which means even if successful, even if voted on, it can't force anything. It can't cause anything to happen. What it does do is it is basically telling the party in power, this is a policy we would like you guys to go ahead and bring forward. Just like at the AGM, the members can vote on policy recommendations. This would be a policy recommendation from the public. That's what this is.
Yeah.
If he checked off the constitutional one and was successful, it becomes binding. It's what the party has to do because that's the difference between the constitutional and the policy one. So all of this effort and all of these little boosts and the two ladies at Breton yesterday will actually change nothing because the power stays with the party, the government. It's just non-binding. So even if he had 1 million people sign and
There's no forcing of the hand for
it's non-binding. That's what binding means. Binding means you have to. This is more of a policy recommendation if successful. So it was a big mistake. And one of my sources told me he actually filed 4 petition applications. So this is a one of 4. And it looked like to some people that he was just trying to stop the APP from having their question brought forward because it takes about 5 months or so each
For you to address each
application,
one.
right? Because you get first, it's got to be approved. That takes about a month. Then you got to get your signatures, which take 3 months, and then you got another month or so to get it validated if you got there. So that would be like a 5 month or so window where he thought nobody else can come forward with questions. He's wrong. Yeah, he's wrong. And I actually confirmed this directly with the big powers that be. Constitutional petitions and applications trump policy ones on similar questions. So it's not that like if his question was, should we get rid of daylight savings time? And the APP is, should we separate from Canada? They can both run concurrently. But when the questions are similar in nature, constitutional ones will take priority. So his strategic decision on this one, if it was to block the APP, failed right out of the gate. He also filed it before the change of July 4th,
Yeah.
which meant his requirements were higher. It just wasn't. I don't think it was designed from the beginning to be successful.
No, I think it was just to get the name out there, the potential movement out there, and to have some headlines that the media would be able to use that were Canada friendly.
The speculation is he's
Yeah.
trying to create a party.
Yeah,
Party.
I had
That's a
conversations
speculation.
about that yesterday evening as well.
Yep. And yeah, he might have 100 or 150,000 people that stood behind him, and then he might try to create a party. But I think that will fail too, because these people weren't for, hey, I want to be a party. They were for, hey, I don't want anything to change. I just want to stay in Canada. And also the judge that's looking at the question from the APP himself said, this is a nothing burger. Like, this doesn't change anything what Luz Beckett is doing here. But I continue here, and I said, you have less than 6 weeks left. We're all waiting to see what happens, but we know it's a flop. And then P.S., thank you for bringing so much attention to the issue. That is certainly helpful. So as he's going out there doing this, there's a lot of people going, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then they're looking
exactly.
into it. And the only people he'll hear from are the ones that are willing to sign it. But what he's not going to be hearing from are the ones that looked into it and said, no, I don't want that. I don't want Forever Canada. So he's absolutely creating a lot more awareness around it. So we'll give credit where credit's due.
A question here from Pietro again in our local chat. Maybe our constitution by the people should trickle down all the way to municipal governance. What do you
No, because I think the Constitution is supposed to limit government. We currently don't do that. There is no, it's not in the Constitution for municipal. And one of the ideas is to actually have one level of government instead of two. So we don't have a federal and a provincial. The new Alberta recommendation is don't bother with a second level of government. And what Petro's talking about there is a second or possibly third level of government. No, I wouldn't agree with that. I would agree that more hands-off and smaller government on a municipal level. They should have less powers. They should be focused on collecting garbage, providing water, and
Doing the
getting rid of
roads.
sewer, those kind of things, and not getting into regulations, how many chickens you have, that kind of stuff. Definitely, I think it should be smaller and it should be limited. The same way that Bruce is going to be talking about. You have no power except for fix the roads, that kind of level. So smaller municipal government, less power for them, so that they're out of our lives and they don't start overreaching, like how many chickens you're allowed to have. Okay, Billboard Chris, a really good little thread here on that there is no such thing as trans. It's really just a mental illness. And our good friend has popped up, and we got a few more minutes. So Billboard Chris is in the UK. He's out there spreading the message that I think his current billboard is children cannot consent to puberty blockers, something along those lines. That's true. That's absolutely true, because they can't consent for alcohol or anything else, but yet they're able to consent for life-altering chemical procedure that is irreversible. Now, I remember when they first started bringing this stuff out, they said, oh, it's reversible. But if they change their mind later, you become sterile, underdeveloped. And no, nature has established this long before the media propaganda did.
Yeah.
So, no, it's not reversible. It's very dangerous and damaging. Alberta won't let this happen anymore. If you're currently on it, you can continue with it, but no new puberty blockers. So it's a good step in the right direction. So Billboard Chris, keep it up. And yes, he's being accosted by a few people that are out in the UK and they don't like it. All right. Who's surprised to learn that a study has now provided some direct
Yeah.
evidence that the mRNA vaccine modified your genes and have now been linked to and found in stage 4 cancer patients. So William Mackis, he's been saying this for the longest time,
Mhm.
but now there's an actual study. I believe this is out of this has got Peter McCullough on it. So out of the US, that's confirmed it. It's
Yeah.
actually linked it, stage 4 bladder cancer following the vaccine. So unfortunately, these things are becoming proven now.
Yes.
First they were certainly suspected because we saw the numbers rising, and now it's being proven. And that's sad, but it's a step in the right direction. Hopefully people will wake up more and more research will go into this, because right now the research is being done by the ones brave enough to do it.
Yeah.
Hopefully this becomes mainstream and
literally mainstream with regards to being shared. Yeah.
well, yeah, when I say mainstream,
Yeah.
I mean adopted by the masses. It's
Mhm.
it's the majority who understands it true. So hopefully they continue that. Oh boy, I was trying to go through this quick, guys. A singer here said some vile things on stage, and he lost his visa application or visa to the
Mhm.
U.S. He won't be going to the U.S. with his messaging. And do be warned, if you're a Canadian, the, the Homeland Department. No, wait, no, the State Department. So
Mhm.
Marco Rubio. Yeah, here we go. Marco Rubio has said, yeah, if you're vile online about Charlie's death, that is something we will block your visa
Yeah.
application for, and that would include any non-U.S. citizen. So yeah, be warned for that. Crazy liberal. I don't know if it was a parody or not. It certainly could be real because, and if it is, I'm sad.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be the way we deal with things, and that's remarkable. I want to get to a big news. But do check it out because if this is real, this is a derangement syndrome. They're
It is.
very deranged. Basically, what she's saying is everything that she's doing. Okay, you're so divisive, yeah, and you're the reason why this country's falling apart. Yeah, I don't like you wearing that and that. All right. If it's not real, okay, that's why I said I don't know if this is in my heart, I hope it's a parody, but if it's not, then that's a good indicator of what's going on here. NVIDIA, $4.33 trillion market cap, tops Canada's GDP, so it's about double our GDP. That's one tech company. NVIDIA's rise to fame is their GPUs, graphic processing unit, and this is what's being used in AI and also in cryptocurrency, but mostly this is AI. So this just goes to show you how much money is going into AI processing.
Yeah.
It's huge. Made this company a $4.33 trillion market cap. Okay, we're getting there quick. We're getting there quick. We're down to 2 minutes. I did want to highlight here that I did have a clip that I took out of that episode of Charlie Kirk's assassination special, where I was warning you about the media. Take a look at the Trusted News Initiative. Okay, the BBC started it, and basically everybody's in there. CBC's in there. We got the AP is in there. We got Reuters is in there. Twitter, Microsoft, Meta, Google, all of them are really in there. And this is meant to be a consolidation of truth. They're supposed to be the ones that provide the truth. They came around. When you hear safe and effective put out there all over the place, this is likely where it came from, because they're the ones that gave themselves a power. The BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, gave themselves a power by kind of granting a lot of like-minded organizations together to say we are the Department of Truth. So take a look at that, because I was warning you about it, because we saw BBC and the others having the same messaging very quickly after the shot on Charlie Kirk. Even before he was announced as deceased, they had the messaging out. So whether it was just a very quick written up post that got sent to their little network, or it was ready for a situation like this, I don't know. But you can see the effects of it. It was everywhere quickly, the same messaging.
For your benefit, people.
Yeah,
Benefit.
a reminder that Canada has given the Canadian Anti-Hate Network $200,000 to help fund them through March 31st, 2026. And they say in their documents, they only target far right, not far left. So you can see what they're there for. And here we go. The big one is Chrystia Freeland has now heading over to Ukraine. I understand she already owns a home there. So she's ready to go, but she's now left the cabinet and is heading I believe it's a special envoy for the Ukrainian reconstruction. She's got a lot of ties to Ukraine, a lot of ties, and some of them are pretty gross. If you're into taking a closer look at that, go do that, and I'll run for office. All right, so let's bring our guest in because it's going to be a lot of time here with you as well there,
Yep.
Bruce. We got through part 1, part 2. Oh, we got you right there in a cough.
Good morning.
Clear my throat. Good morning and congratulations. I saw you on Nadine Wellwood's podcast as well.
Right.
Sharing this information. Albertans, the feedback we've got are very pleased with what you've done here. What's the feedback you've received?
Good, great, good. Well, thank you for that. I'm glad to hear it. Same here. So it's a challenging thing, right? It's a lot to take in, because it is trying to turn the page on the way we're used to having things in a constitution. So the people who have taken the time to go through it, the reception has been excellent. But it's going to be a bit of effort for people to go through that task of trying to figure out what this is really about. And what it actually is about is designing a different kind of constitution than the one we have now, because a lot of our problems stem from the one we have now. And it's difficult to change our mental furniture. But in order to, I put this this way in the piece, in order to go where we have never gone, we need to do what we have never done. And so I hope people will have an open mind about what the possibilities are.
Absolutely. Go where man has never gone before. I think that's like a space thing as well in Star Trek.
Sure.
Right? You're bringing up all of these. Star Wars with the Force, Star Trek is go where we've never gone before. You must like sci-fi. Now, I put on my Bruce Pardy hat earlier because there was a question on this episode from one of our longtime followers and participants in our chats asking whether or not the Constitution should address municipal level government. And before you jump on it, I said the response was no. The last thing we need to do that is to start doing that in the Constitution, but it should be the same thing, which is limited government. So you start off with the no powers except for, even on that level. So it would be like, you can do the roads, you can do the water, but stay away from the chickens. That kind of stuff would be the idea there.
Yes. No, I agree. The less government, the better. Let's say this. The danger in a constitution, or one of the many dangers in a constitution, is that we'll be tempted to set out specific rules about specific things because we think we know in the present moment how everything's supposed to be. And that's not true. Well, the idea of a constitution is to set out an architecture. You know, what are the institutions going to be and what are the basic principles involved? And then after that, you put it in place and you let the thing run. And so specifically to municipalities, my response is the same as yours, Jason. Municipalities constitutionally should not exist. They don't exist now. Now, that's not a reason to have it the same way, but they don't exist now. At the moment, municipalities are purely a function of provincial legislation. And in a new Alberta, it will be a unitary state that is just one state, no states, no provinces. And that central level of government is the one with the authority. We don't want concentrations of power. That's true. But we will have provisions in there to make sure that the power that the central government has is diluted to a considerable extent. For example, by flipping the default, which you referred to. Municipalities, we do not want to empower. We do not want to create. We don't not want to give them a whole list of things that they're able to do. In fact, in this new constitution, under this new constitution, municipalities, if they exist at all, will have very, very few things that they are able to do. There's really no need for them. Part of the problem we have now is that everything is bloated. Everything is bloated, including and especially municipalities. And so rather than trying to tinker with it, it's best just to leave them out and go back to the basic principles.
And that would include a medium salary and 6-year max, the same type of things that the Constitution is providing as a framework. It would also apply there.
Also apply to that. Yes, correct.
Yes,
that's right.
If you do have a municipal government, you choose to do that, it would have the same framework. And I like that
That's
a lot.
right. That's right. Everybody who works for the state, including a municipality, because the municipalities are part of the state. Everybody who works for the state can work for the state for a maximum of 6 years over their lifetime. That might be for the municipality. It might be for the central government. It might be in a court, but 6 years total. And everybody who works for the state, including a municipality, will be paid the national median wage. That is, working for the city is not a way to get rich.
And then there was one comment after that, because I laughed because their comment was meant to push against it, but a comment made the point. And it was, well, if we do that, we're not going to have a lot of professionals there. And I'm like, congratulations,
Yeah.
you got it. That's exactly right. That's
right.
right, because you want the private sector to be where the professionals are doing a bunch of things. You want limited government, just small tasks and roles, because it needs to be something that can roll over. And by design, because it's limited that way, you won't be able to have bureaucrats. You won't be able to have, long-term, career-minded people. And also, you won't have the same level of corruption because you're not going to be there long enough. So it's by design that the government will do very little. And that's another one of those pieces that people have to kind of switch their mind on, because they're so used to government doing so much. And they're like, well, we really want them to do that anymore? Or do we really want them to be very restricted on what they can do, should do, and leave the rest to the open free market of the private side?
This is an excellent example of what we're talking about, which is we're trying to do it differently. And one of the problems right now is that we are under the thumb of an expert technocracy, or at least a technocracy that claims to be expert. The expertise they claim. Now, how do you end that? Well, the one thing you're not going to try to do is make sure that all the experts work for the state, right? So the comment is quite right. Like, how are you going to incentivize, all the very well trained expert people to work for the state? We don't want them to work for the state.
That's right.
We want them to work in the private sector where they belong.
I agree. And that's why I think it's important for people to kind of grasp that concept, is it is an amateur government. It's meant to be. So that when somebody comes in, they have the role of, well, I'm the person who's going to maintain the roads. And it's a very restrictive thing. But they don't need to be the one that makes relationships with the contractors. And because even the contractors are going to be cycled through quite a bit. But there isn't a long-term relationship there. There isn't something you're trying to build there because it's not needed. What's needed is identifying which places need road, what needs to be hardtop, where the money's coming from. That's kind of where your role is, not more than that. And that's where bureaucracy is. That's where people don't understand that. That's where the bureaucracy is. I'm having a relationship with them. They're inviting me to their conference. I feel all special with their stuff. That's the corruption. That's the bureaucracy that we actually want to try and get rid of.
And we have a whole host of people. Sorry, go ahead, Paula.
No, I was saying not the projects that need to get done. It's because people have that concern of, if we have a smaller government, how are we still going to get the roads done because they have to plan for this type of thing? No, the planning and whatnot can still go ahead. The contracts can still go ahead. But like you said, it's the relationship building, the whole, this old guy, we know each other, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, we could get a deal done. I think that's what people want to see the end of.
Yeah.
And we have a whole host of people inside government who think they know best and have taken hold of the reins and are charging off in the direction that they think is appropriate. And that's the kind of thing that has to stop.
I love it. So now we just got to jump back into it, because I think we've kind of caught everybody up. We're now on to section 7, because of section 6 was about what we just talked about there, which was amateur government and salaries. Right. Now we're on to branches of the state and elections. And by the way, would you be offended if I tattooed this on me?
I would be delighted and honored, Jason.
Or at least a Bruce Pardy. I don't know how Paula would feel about that, but you're doing a great job here. All right, so branches of the state and elections, which we're about to go into. And here in Alberta, October 20th, there's an election here, so it's pretty timely.
Right. So what we're trying to do here is establish a distinct separation of powers, like they have in the U.S. Some of the labels here I've borrowed from the U.S. So you have a separate legislature and executive. The president, as in the U.S., heads the executive, is elected, and the legislature is elected. It's a bicameral legislative body with two bodies there, like in the U.S. You have a House of Representatives and a Senate. Now, the distinction between them, the reason to have both of them, is that they are representative on a different basis. The House represents by population, and the Senate represents by territory, as in territories of equal size. So one of the difficulties we have right now with a single House, if it represents by population, is that it ends up representing urban areas more than rural areas because the population is in the urban areas. So what you do is you have a second body that represents on a different basis, and you offset the disproportionate influence that urban ridings would have. So you have the House on one hand by population, and the Senate on the other hand by size of territory.
Now, the way the U.S. does it is exactly what you're explaining there. And the way they explain it is we don't want California or New York to run the entire country because that's what would happen with a population-based representation only. That's why the Senate has 2 per state.
That's
now,
right.
Would you see it? Is it 2 per region as well? Or would it be 1 per region?
One per region. So one distinction between the new Alberta and the U.S., of course, is the U.S. has states, and in the Senate you have 2 seats per state, regardless of the population or, for that matter, the size of the state. So this is just a slightly different. So you take the province and you divide it up into 50 areas of equal size, territorial size, and then you have 1 Senate seat in each of those areas. And those areas will partly, some of them will be in the cities, some will be in the country. And it doesn't matter. The point is representation by size of territory, offsetting that representation by population effect in the House.
Yeah, and I see here you broke it down to 87 House. So you did some math there?
No, I just picked 87 because that's what you have now. You can just leave those as the way they are, and there's no reason to change that particular aspect. But then you add the second House, and I chose 50 as a nice round number. And you'll need somebody to take a map of Alberta and draw some lines and divide it up into 50 spots, and then each of one of those districts gets 1 Senate seat.
Okay, and who's the tiebreaker in the U.S.? It's the VP.
Yes. Well, I haven't identified that. You could identify a tiebreaker. You might not need to do that in this sense. If you have a tie, that means that the motion or the bill, whatever it is, doesn't pass.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. I can see that structure, and I recognize it a lot from the U.S. Senate as well. Is there a veto power?
I have not indicated a veto power. I don't think it's appropriate for this reason. If you're really going to separate the functions, legislature from executive, then the executive maybe shouldn't have a role in the legislative process. Now, I'm not a huge critic of the presidential veto in the U.S., but I actually don't think it's necessary. You have in this structure considerable checks and balances, restrictions on what the state can do, and then the offsetting effects of the 2 houses together. So I wasn't inclined to include it, but one might disagree.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one because that's centralizing power completely.
Right.
You're giving the executive side supreme power over the legislature, and that's
Correct.
something I've never did like that. And pardon power, I've never been a fan of either.
Yes, and I have not included a pardon power either.
Yeah, because that again does the same thing. It's like rule of law until I say no.
That's right.
It's like, no, I'm not a fan of that. It's like, oh.
Right.
And then now the U.S. are getting into preemptive pardon powers. Like, oh boy.
Yes. Well, you can see what a bad idea as soon as it starts to get out of control, and that's where it's going now.
Yeah, excellent. I like that a lot. The executive, we kind of talked about that. The executive power should be vested in a president, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and elected every 3rd year.
Correct.
So every 3 years. So they can do up to 2 terms if it's a 6-year max, right?
Up to 2 terms. And people might think, well, that's pretty quick. And it's true. 3 years is not very long. But remember, these people are not going to be doing very much because there's not very much that they can do. Now, you might have exceptions. If you happen to be in an international conflict of some kind or at war, God forbid, then sure, the president is the commander in chief and therefore will be very busy. But the 3-year thing is short, but you don't want your people to be embedded there for too long. So a maximum of 2 terms, if that's the way they want to spend their 6 years, they finish and then they're gone.
Okay, and I also see staggered with the elections, the House and Senate. So just like the U.S. where there's midterms, you kind of have an election in the middle of it. I think the House and Senate is every 2 years, right? Or the houses.
Well, no, it's every 3 years, but staggered.
No, in the
so
States.
In the States, yes.
Two
Well,
years.
different for the two. The two houses have a different schedule. But they do their best so that the elections don't all happen at the same moment.
Okay, so and it would be a 3-year up to 2 terms.
That's
same
correct.
deal here for the president. Okay,
That's
and
right.
then the vice president is a running mate, which is the U.S. changed to that because it used to be who came in second became the vice president.
Right.
You specifically made it a running mate.
I did,
That's
but
a lot
here's one thing for people to remember about the running mate. So if you're the vice presidential running mate and the two of you win, you and your presidential partner, if you win once and then you win again, then you've just spent 6 years as the vice president. You are now not eligible to run again. So you're going to have people as vice president who don't have the ambition to be the president afterwards. And what we're trying to get out of is people who want the reins of power to drive the country to where they want to go. We don't want that kind of person. We want people who are a little bit reluctant to serve. And so you might be able to persuade someone to be your running mate on the understanding that they're probably not going to be the president after you're gone.
No.
Yeah. Whereas in the opposite, we're looking at the US because everyone's hoping that this is the Trump's final term and then JD Vance will be coming up next behind him as president.
Right, because technically JD Vance could spend 16 years in the White House.
Yeah,
8 as a VP, 8 as a president.
Right.
And also the VP doesn't have the tie-breaking power of the Senate. So the power there is not high when it comes to the VP by design.
Correct.
Okay. And I also see here that the person the pleasure of the president. So the executive is appointed, not elected.
Yes, well, but some part of the executive. When we say the executive, we mean the whole branch. Now, the cabinet, the president's cabinet, is part of the executive branch. That really the head of the executive branch, and they are appointed. So the president will choose those people, with the approval of the Senate. But it also includes all the employees. And the point here is this: it's the executive branch. The president heads the executive branch. The president is elected. The executive branch and the people who run it are under his authority, and if he wants to get rid of somebody, including an employee, then he can do so because he's responsible for how the executive branch runs. What we're doing here is we are ensuring, not that we haven't already done so with the other provisions, but we are ensuring here that there is no deep state that is calling the shots in contradiction to what the elected president wants to do.
No, I do see here an high power for the president because they can dismiss without notice and without cause.
Correct.
For
That's
any
it.
reason.
For any reason at all. So if there is an office clerk working in some department who is spouting off about how bad the president is and how bad his policies are, and the president assesses that person is not supportive of his government, the president can say, "I'm sorry, you're fired."
Okay. And if that person was, let's say, 2 years into serving, they could come back later and do another 2 or 4 years under a different president.
That's correct.
Okay. It was the without cause part that raised my eyebrow because that means it's almost like an employee veto power. You don't have to have a due process on that one. And that was by design, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
In other words, let's just underline the point here. Okay. So people, again, this is one more thing people are not used to. What we're doing here is making employment with the state not a sure thing, not a stable thing, not an embedded thing. Yes, you can be dismissed for any reason at any time by the president. If you don't want that kind of situation, then don't work for the state.
Okay, and
Yeah.
and sorry, I'm just going to back up quickly here. What are the ways to remove the president? I obviously see death here, resignation, but is there a way to remove the president?
Well, so this is an interesting question.
Like impeachment, right?
Yeah.
Well, impeachment, yes, but so let's. I want to take your question in a bit of a broader way, because one thing I have not included here is recall. The ability of citizens to get together in the middle of a term and say, we don't like the way this is going, we want to vote again. So I'm not a big fan of that, and here's why. Especially under this model, you have very short terms, 3-year elections, and you have the voice of the people deciding who's going to be in those spots. If you have recall provisions and processes that are easily triggered to get people out of the positions that they've been elected to, then what you're likely to get is rule by the mob. Every time the mob gets a feeling that, well, we don't like the last thing that happened, we want to get those people out now. Now you really have instability. And because the thing has been set up in such a way that the state is relatively powerless now, the people in it don't stay very long. The terms are short. The elections are frequent. There's really no reason to have recall provisions that introduces a very extreme degree of instability, I think, in the institution. It's good to have it powerless, but it's not good to have the mob empowered to sort of take it down, any day of the week.
Okay, and yeah, because it is a 3-year with staggered House and Senate, you really have an election like almost 1.5 years, every 1.5 years, where that's also when you can say, well, we don't like what he's doing or she's doing,
Yeah.
and we're not going to, remove a lot of the power out of the House by putting more different people in. And also when you say rule by the mob, you also will end up with pandering to the mob, which is something that you don't want to have in your
Yeah.
government, where they're just
So-
pandering to the mob.
Let's put the big picture this way. So in setting a constitution up, and we talked about this, Jason, there are two bad choices.
Mhm.
One choice is to be ruled by the elite, and the other bad choice is to be ruled by the mob. You don't want either one. What you want is a constitution that allows you to rule yourself and allows other people to rule themselves without allowing either one of you to interfere with the other. Okay. But the mob is a power that wants to interfere with you, as is the elite. Right. So what we're trying to do is design a constitution that does not allow either one. People like to think that if we give power to the people, it's a favorite phrase, to the people, allow the people to decide, allow the people to recall and to remove and to elect and to rule by referendum. Okay. Referendum for some things are appropriate, but for most things they are not, because what you're doing is giving power to the mob. The example that we used last time, Jason, we talked about this was, let's say by referendum we decided all our COVID policies. So we'll have a referendum to say, all right, should everybody get a vaccine? Is everybody required to get a vaccine by referendum? Okay, well, now you got a problem, because if 75% at the height of COVID says, yeah, everybody gets a vaccine because they've been duped into thinking the vaccine is safe and effective. 75% in the referendum say that everybody has to get a vaccine. Okay. That won't do, because now your individual autonomy is gone. Everybody now has to get a vaccine or ends up in prison. Okay. That's not a free society. So you don't want rule by elites. It's true. You also don't want to be ruled by the mob.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
that completely, because there is no wisdom of the crowd, but there's certainly reactions by the crowd. And, you can be feared into things pretty quick.
As
History
we've
has shown
seen.
that. That's
Yeah.
not speculation. In that many times. Okay, the judiciary. So now we're into the court side of things.
Yes.
There's an appeals court of one judge for every 100,000 citizens, and an Alberta trials court. So this would be like the criminal side of things.
Well, this would be the trial court for all different kinds of cases, criminal, civil, as the case may be. And these are the only courts. So one of the problems we have right now is we have a plethora of courts, and especially tribunals, non-court bodies that are acting like courts, that are appointed by the government, that pretend to be courts, sort of, but they're not really courts. We have a divided court jurisdiction. All of those are gone. One thing we do not want is executive bodies like tribunals, which are executive branch bodies, pretending to be courts without the limitations of courts. So those are gone. What we have instead is a first level court to do trials of all kinds, and then and then appeals level to appeal those trial court decisions to one level up, and that's it.
No Supreme Court.
No Supreme Court, because and this is going on to the next
That's
article.
the elite again.
You what you're doing, exactly what you are doing when you create a Supreme Court of a limited number of judges with a final say on things, with the power of precedence, is you're creating like a star chamber. You know, these are the people who are going now to decide all kinds of questions, like what the Constitution means. And let's just combine Section 7 with Section 8, which follows, which are all about the courts. Constitutions, all of them, have an Achilles heel, and that is that they are written in words, and words contain ambiguities. And if you empower a court, especially a high court, the highest court, if you give that court the power to decide what the Constitution means, then you are no longer ruled by the Constitution. Instead, you are ruled by the court. And that cannot be. That's the situation that we have pretty much in Canada today. If you read the words of the Constitution, including the Charter, and you read what the Supreme Court has said that the Charter means, sometimes those two things don't add up. And what prevails is what the court has said. That's not the way we want it to be.
And I see that they're elected here every 6th year. So is it one term for the judge?
One term for the judge. That's right. You can sit. You don't have to sit for 6 years, but you can. That's to give the judge a little bit more runway, because sometimes cases take a long time to proceed. So you don't want the elections to be taking place as often for the judges as for the others. But let's underline this. Unlike the system we have now, where judges are appointed, Supreme Court of Canada judges are appointed and can sit there till 75. Again, in this system, 6 years, 6 years total. If you want to sit for 6 years, fine. After that, you're done. You go back to doing whatever you were doing before.
And here's the part that I really, really like, is for trial and appeals. Judges of the appeals court may or may not be lawyers. You don't have to be part of the bar. That's a good change.
Right. Well, right now we are subject to if I can use this word, to the hegemony of the legal profession. Right? They have been using for a long time their authority as the people who know the law, basically to control the legal system. And they over time they have not been concerned about the fact that the legal system has become opaque and not accessible by most of the people most of the time. And so one way to break through that is simply to say, look, you're allowed to be a judge. You're allowed to represent clients in court if you want to, if they want you to. If people want to elect you, because, if you're not a lawyer, then they're allowed to elect who they want. And so it should not be a requirement that you get a state mandated stamp of approval before you're allowed to do these functions.
And this isn't a new thing. In Ontario, the lower courts, so the small claims courts, don't have to be a lawyer, but the superior courts do. So there's
That's
two
correct.
levels there in Ontario, but the lower ones don't have to be lawyers. So this is not, you're not breaking ground here. You're just making it both systems, the appeals and the trial levels, are anybody that gets elected.
And you can expect, though, of course, the lawyers and the judges to really not like this idea one bit, because you're going to destroy
They hated paralegals in Ontario. Like, they're very protective.
They're going to destroy their monopoly. The one thing you can't have in a free society are monopolies enforced by the state.
So I love that a lot, because I think that's part of our problem is we don't have engineers or technicians or technical people. Like, we don't on the judge level. Doctors, like a doctor could be elected as a judge under this new system. That
Yes.
might have helped. That might have helped quite a bit during COVID. So I'm not trying to skip through everything quickly on you here, but we do want to get to
Of
number
course.
9.
Of course.
Only
Yes.
human beings are legal persons. This is a big
Yeah.
change for some people because that means corporations can't be.
That's
AI can't be. Robots can't be. Only human beings. And it looks like you're also forward thinking on this one too, because we're headed into the age of robots.
Right. Right. Now we are talking about the law. The Constitution is talking about the law. So we're not saying robots can't exist. We're not saying organizations can't exist. We're not saying that organizations that you call a corporation can't exist. You can come together in any way you want with other people, and you can form whatever kind of organizations you want and call it whatever you want. Now, this is a free country. You can do what you want. The point is that as far as the law is concerned, the law cannot give legal personality to other kinds of entities besides human beings. So you have to act as yourself in your legal matters, making contracts, going to court, and that kind of thing. Right now, we have all kinds of entities that the state creates, that the state gives both legal personality to and advantages to. So one of the reasons to have corporations, the theory goes, is that corporations are more efficient than people. And they are, because they are given legal personality, number one, and they are able to give limited liability to their shareholders, to their investors. So they are able to gather up much more capital and hold many more assets and employ more people than any single human being tends to be able to do. And so what you do is, what the state has done, in fact, is tilt the playing field. Human beings cannot compete with corporations. And the existence of big corporations is one of the rationales that we hear for having a big, powerful state to offset each other. But the irony is they're together. The big corporations are a creation of a big state. So if you don't have a big state, you don't have big corporations, you just have people who are able to do whatever they want together. But when they do that and make contracts and arrangements between themselves, which is great, that's the way it's supposed to happen, those arrangements don't bind other people who are not parties to the contract. So if you want to get together and say, we're going to, arrange this way to do business through a thing we're going to call the corporation, that's fine. You can do that. You can do that, no problem. But you can't bind other people who have not agreed to it, and they will deal with you directly as a human being.
I like where you're headed with that. And corporations, unions, central banks, school boards, etc. Right?
Yeah.
All those things, not just corporations, as you say, corporations, unions, school boards, central banks, municipalities, and so on and so forth. The list goes on. In other words, we are not going to be a society with all different kinds of legally recognized institutions that have more power than the rank and file person on the street.
One of the things I never liked about how we do things right now is a corporation has basically all the same rights as a person, except you can't jail a corporation.
Yeah.
You can't, well, in some ways you can dissolve them on purpose, but they pay off fines. Like Pfizer paying off a couple $2 billion for murdering people, and then they move on to their next thing. How would that be tackling? And babe, if you want to run,
Sure.
I do want to continue. It was up to
Right.
you if you want to stick around.
Let's stick around for a little bit.
And the existence of corporations causes all kinds of problems in exactly the way that you described, right? So corporation commits a criminal act. How are you going to jail it? Well, you can't jail a corporation. Sometimes you try and, quote, look behind the corporate veil to see, who the human beings are.
Piercing the corporate veil. That's hard.
Right? It's very difficult. And it sort of makes the point, which is this is all artificial. People are doing the acting. And so people should be acting on their own behalf, not hiding behind this shield of a corporation. And moreover, it is the big corporations with the corporate, and financial might, the concentration of economic power, that tend to lobby and interfere and manipulate the way the politics works. Right? So if you only have human beings as legal persons, then you're going to get rid of a whole host of problems sort of right off the bat.
want to highlight a quick comment here that from Mr. Phil. What I learned in personal finance is that a human being is called a natural person and a legal person is a corporation.
Well, they're both, and for lots of the law, they're
Mhm.
treated the same. They take
Well,
own property. Go ahead.
the human so legal persons include human beings and include corporations and include unions and include any other entity that a statute gives legal personality to, and that includes human beings. Now, human beings are natural persons. Maybe that's the distinction, but natural person is not really a meaningful legal category that distinguishes it from other things. So let's take this. Let's say you have a piece of property or two pieces of property. A human being owns one of them. They're the title holder. And a corporation owns the other one. They're the title holder. Okay. There's no meaningful distinction between the status that those two parties have vis-a-vis those properties. The legal status they have is basically the same. And so what we're trying to do is get rid of the corporate version and say all property is going to be owned by human beings because only human beings can own property.
I like that a lot
Yeah.
because we have restrictions on human beings. At the age of 18, you can do this stuff and stuff. But we don't have restrictions like that. Once a corporation is 18 years old, then it can start doing things like we don't have anything like that. Like day one, you can incorporate, and day two, you can start owning property and doing some nasty stuff and have no real consequences. So I like what you're trying to do here. This is again, we're flipping the model and we're changing things.
Flipping the model.
people understand it.
Now we need to acknowledge something. Number one, this is going to be a big change and a difficult one for this reason. There are still going to be corporate bodies in other jurisdictions, in other countries,
Right, like global
Yeah.
companies.
and you're going to want to be able to do business with those corporations. And so this would be easy if Alberta was the only country in the world. You just do it, and the scheme would change. But you still have the old scheme outside the borders, and so is going to have to be some way for individual Albertans to be able to do business with those corporate bodies outside, because nobody else is going to do this, certainly not right away. So, that's one of the things that has to evolve. I want to make this point. There's an inclination to want to know on day one, exactly how is this going to work? How is this designed? How is this going to work from now on? That's not how these things happen. What happens is you choose the principles upon which your society is going to be governed, and then you let people adapt to it over time. Hayek says this about the market, right? This is information. The people who are doing things are the ones who have the best information about how to proceed. And it's an evolutionary process and not a declaratory one. The inclination we have to resist is the inclination to want to know exactly how this is going to work in all its detail at the time the thing is put in place. That's not how it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's like trying to know which school your child's going to go to before you made a child. Like
Right.
sometimes you just have the child and see where it ends up. We'll get there. Be flexible on that one.
Right.
And yeah, you do bring up a good point. Now there are places around the world where, on a business level, things are different. Like for example, in China, I think it's 51% ownership has to be Chinese citizen for international companies, something along those lines. Any requirements like that here?
Well, we're not going to have corporations, so no, right? So you're just not going to be able to have a corporation that is legally recognized in a courtroom as being an entity. So you can organize yourself in any way you want. It's just that when you show up to be accounted for in legal terms, it's just going to be you and not the organization that you put together.
That's going to force the organizations to make sure that they have good people running this, because those good people don't want to be sued and brought into the court for various
That's
things.
exactly right. That's exactly right. So the responsibility for what you do is yours. And you can't hide behind the idea that, well, not this case because I'm acting for an organization. The organization does not have legal personality. You are acting for you. Your actions, you are responsible for your own actions, whatever they happen to be. If you do well, then you get the rewards. If you do badly, if you use force against somebody else as a person, then they will sue you and not some corporate entity.
Yeah, one of the other things I never did like, which wouldn't be possible under this model, is they just start a new corporation, move the assets, leave the liabilities, change the name, then boom, continue. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that because once things get bad or you get sued or there's a judgment, you just move your assets, and sometimes that's loud or there's
But
loopholes.
that's one of the reasons they exist. I mean, the corporations partly exist so that their activities are sheltered. So to promote industrial activity, so as to concentrate resources, to be efficient. But part of being efficient is to avoid responsibility, and so you can create shell corporations or alternative places to shield assets and so on. That's part of the attraction. It's also part of the problem.
How would this work with insurance companies, though? Because you have your business insurance, you have your directors and officers insurance. Like, how would that work if you want to sue the company, but it's not the company
There is
going
no
after the
company.
people?
You'd
There
be
is no
suing
company.
people.
There is
Yeah,
no
so you'd
company.
have to literally,
Insurance would still be a private market thing that could
yeah.
exist.
100%. You can get insurance for whatever an insurance company will cover you for.
Yeah.
We actually may see new types of insurance come out of this because
Yeah.
I would
there's new-
expect so. I would expect so. Sure. This
And
is
they'll
part.
create it. They'll sell a policy. They'll create it.
We will
But that's a good
create.
question, Kurt.
We will
Yeah.
create. This is the thing. One of the things that people have lost sight of or lost faith in. The market produces what people want,
It's very true.
unless the government interferes in that. And we're trying to get the government to stop interfering.
No, I
Yeah.
like it a lot. And Paula comes from the insurance industry. That's why that's top of mind for her. She was one of those senior brokers,
Yeah.
and she understands the value and also the consequence to it. Like how there's certain businesses you can't even start unless you get insurance for it, and
Mhm.
getting that insurance is difficult, and that kind of limits what businesses do. And also, we saw the insurance industry put their fingers into things like, if you're not following the COVID recommendations,
Yes.
we're not covering you for things.
Yeah.
Yes. So what tends to happen here is if you have a state mandate that requires insurance before you can participate in certain kind of activity, then you no longer have a free market for insurance. You have a mandated market for insurance. You have essentially, now there may be competing insurance companies within that sphere, but you've essentially created a captured market. It needs to be a free market. If you want to get insurance, then you buy insurance. If you don't want to buy insurance, then on your own head, take the risk. Insurance is a good idea, but the state should not be in the role of saying you have to do the following things before you can compete.
Right, and a good example in that is car insurance. So a lot of places you're forced to buy car insurance, and the argument there is to be protected, everybody should have insurance. But the type of insurance I could buy protects me from even a non-insured driver hitting me. And that would be the kind of market, not requirements, but what the market would start to provide. I could buy insurance that protects me no matter what the situation, as opposed to the government forcing everybody to have liability insurance, for example.
And when the government interferes in the commercial choices of individuals, then what you get is a twisted market. You get outcomes that a free market, if I can use that term, a free market would never produce.
Like no fault insurance.
No fault. I mean, all kinds. The list is endless of things that the government interference has screwed up.
Yeah, and pensions. We were talking to Nadine Willwood. Pensions, they're not really pensions.
Yeah.
Because they don't exist after you, and you're not actually building an asset that can be passed on. They're just using a word pension on the government level.
So then on that note, I'll step away.
Okay.
Well,
we're losing one of our people because she's got to go take care of the children. We're going to continue the
All right. See you, Paul.
Okay. Bye, love. Because I definitely want to get through this. First, I love this stuff. I'm a legal guy, and this excites me, and I think this is very important. Citizenship. Wow, this is now put on our new One ID in Alberta. So Alberta now launched a One ID that has citizenship on it. It's the first one that did that. We're not even sure why. We had talked about this yesterday. But citizenship, this is one of the things that a lot of people are worried about. Will I lose my Canadian citizenship? Do I lose my Canadian passport? And what does this mean under a new Alberta citizenship?
Right. So on the Canadian question, the answer is Nobody knows. It will depend upon the Canadian government and what it wants to do with those people who become Alberta citizens. If the Canadian government wants to allow you to keep your Canadian citizenship, then you will. And if it doesn't, then there'll be a different story. It might be part of the negotiations. But this is part of the situation that we need to resist trying to get certainty about, because certainty is not possible. If you're serious about being an independent country, then being a citizen of the other country shouldn't be on the top of the list of things that you're determined to maintain. That doesn't make sense. That means you're not serious about it. If you really want an independent Alberta, then the citizenship you should be concerned about is Albertan, not Canadian.
And just a quick little thing is, currently my understanding is Canada doesn't have a way for you to renounce your citizenship. So they would have to create something if they wanted to go that way, but that's Canada. That's something
That's
that Canada
and they have control over immigration. They can pass a new statute. People have said, "Oh, but that would be against the Charter of Rights," or other kinds of legal expectations. You don't know that. Back to the point of trying to nail down the uncertainty, the inherent uncertainty of this. It is possible that that Parliament would enact legislation that would allow them to withdraw citizenship from every person who decides to take Alberta citizenship. We don't know that, but it's a possibility. So don't make that a condition of your leaving.
For sure. And that would be part of the negotiation stage, or we'll just find out when we get there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's not like when you're in a divorce, you can start saying you can't date other people. No. We'll find out when we get there. It's
right.
not a time to talk about that, and we'll move on. But let's go ahead and define what Alberta citizenship means.
Right. So I have suggested here that citizenship will be a very narrow thing, because there's a problem. The problem is this: over time, governments who have had control over immigration and citizenship have thrown open the doors to rampant immigration, too many people too fast, and they've put their own national cultures in doubt. And so what you don't want is to give in this new constitution, that's one of the powers you do not want to give to the government. So you need to have a rule in the constitution defining how you get citizenship. And I've described a very narrow rule here, which is that children of citizens who are born in Alberta become citizens automatically, and children of citizens who are born outside Alberta can become citizens on application. And that is it. There'll be you can have people come in, you can have permanent residents, you can have people who visit, but there is no other route to becoming a citizen. Now, one of the reactions that I've had to that is, well, yeah, okay, but we also want other Canadians who are sympathetic to Alberta to be able to come in and become citizens. And my response to that is, yes, you do. And in this process, there will be a transition. And one of those transitional questions will be exactly that. In the transition from a province to an independent country, who can be the first citizens of this country? And I would imagine that would include sort of a window within which Canadians from across the country could decide to move to Alberta and become Alberta citizens, as opposed to staying in Canada. That's a transition question. The point of this section we're talking about here is once that transition is done, once the Constitution is adopted, once independence is declared and the negotiation is finished, once the people have moved, once you are in a set situation, then who gets to become a citizen? And the answer is children of citizens. And that's it. Because otherwise, your governments are likely to do what they've done now, which is throw the doors open. And we can't have that.
Okay, so to be very clear here, there is no immigration path to citizenship.
Correct.
Okay,
now
that's something that people have to wrap their minds around.
Yeah, because they'll say, well, but we're an immigration culture. Canada is based upon immigration. That's true, all true. But you've also seen the damaging effects of having a state with the control over that question. One of the things we have not been able to control in Canada is the degree to which our governments are flooding their own country with people who do not believe in the culture. And we haven't been able to stop it, right? So the Constitution needs to deal with that question right off the bat and prevent the government from having that power.
Okay, I can see the reason for that, because you also remove the motivation for some to come here for the purpose of becoming a citizen and altering the nation itself. Remove that motivation completely. Like some say, there's large groups out there that are doing exactly that. That wouldn't be something that's possible under New Alberta. But this is not a closing down immigration. This is just closing down the path to citizenship.
That is correct. You can have visitors and you can have permanent residents. If people who want to come and live in Alberta and the government wants to create rules for that to take place, that's fine. It's just that once you're here, I mean, in Alberta, there is no path to citizenship, and people have to arrive with that understanding.
I can see how that would close down a lot of corruption and attempts to change a country, even over generations. It would still be very difficult. That would close that door pretty quickly.
Yep.
What about people who are currently here? Like you said, that transition period. So would I qualify as a new Albertan citizen under the
Yes, I would think. And I mean, I'm hoping that the powers that be in this process would say, look, in the transition from a province to an independent country, we want along with us all those Canadians who want to move to Alberta and become Albertan as opposed to Canadian. I mean, we want those people. That will be part of our strengths. We want people who don't want to be part of this to leave, and we want people to join us who are of similar mind to in this adventure. And so I'm hoping that the transition period would allow, especially people like you, Jason, who may have lived outside Alberta but are now in Alberta being Albertan. And I would hope that even people like me who are not presently in Alberta, but maybe who want to be part of an independent Alberta, will be given the opportunity to do that.
I like that, because this is the Constitution. This isn't the transitional documentation.
Correct.
And that's something that have to come.
Yeah. Right.
Now, I really like this one line, and I think this might shock some people, but I think this is one of the most powerful lines in this entire thing. No law or court shall take account of the identity, background, race, lineage, culture, origin, ethnicity. Sorry, I have that. That's a bad word for me. A religion, gender, sex, sexuality, wealth, or status of any citizen. But we cannot create protective groups.
Yes. Again, sure. This echoes, I'm afraid, Section 15.1 of the Charter, which has turned out to be a disaster because of 15.2 and the way our Supreme Court has interpreted 15.1. But it needs to be said that our system of law in the new country is a system of the rule of law and blind justice, where your identity does not matter. We do not have different tiers of rights depending upon the group that you belong to. That is out. And so I think it's worth stating in black and white that the law and the courts shall not take account of your identity and your group, belonging, in order to apply the neutral rules to you.
Now, I'm just going to give a small suggestion here, because when I see lists, iterated lists,
Sure.
that leaves a bit of a loophole. Like, oh, this one wasn't there, so now we can start making rules about health status or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
What about just being a little bit more clear on saying that you can't take anything other than, like, everybody's equal? Like, is there a way to just say that instead of listing off all these?
Yes. Well, this goes back to the Achilles heel that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. So this is all written in words, and part of the challenge here is to write in words what it is that we mean in a way that cannot be misinterpreted. And in fact, let's acknowledge this, that's impossible. Because if somebody wants to misinterpret it and has the power to do so, then they will. And you can look at lots of cases from our courts in which you can say, well, that's not what it says. And they clearly didn't want to go along with what it said, so they find a reason to interpret it differently. Okay, we just have to acknowledge that, and this, hopefully this will get people out of the inclination to do the following thing when they're designing a constitution, which is, well, let's just list stuff, list rules about things that we've seen go wrong. We'll just list them and that will fix the problem. No, it won't. Because if you still empower the institutions to interpret what the words mean, you'll end up right back where you started from. This is one example of a provision that's very difficult to state in a way that people can't get around. But it's worth the attempt to express the idea that justice must be blind. And so, yeah, we might be able to improve the wording, perhaps so. Let's work on it. But the idea is sound, and we need to put the idea in a way that is least likely to be able to be misinterpreted.
Yeah, it's tough because it also can be future proof. Like you don't know what's coming around the next corner. So it's very difficult. Okay, cool. So now we're in separation of powers. This is where some checks and balances come into play.
Right. So separation of powers is a very basic idea, but it is largely not adhered to in Canada at present.
You're so kind. It's overreach. We know they do this.
Well, but it's not just overreach. I mean, it is overreach, but it's overreach by design. So here's the basic idea. You have three branches of the state: the legislature, the executive, and the courts, and they all do a different thing. The legislature passes bills, they legislate. The executive executes, as the word suggests, and the courts apply the rules passed by the legislature to the cases. Okay, and the theory is that keeps us free because no one branch has control over the whole process. One of them is making the rules, one of them is laying the charges, and the other one's making the decisions in the case. Okay, and the courts can't design the rules, and the legislature can't decide the cases, and the executive can't decide the outcome. Okay, that's the theory. Problem is that that's very inconvenient for governments and bureaucrats and courts and legislatures, because that means that everything is broken up and they can't tell what the result's going to be, and they are result oriented. They all want to see the results they want to see, and so by design, the legislature delegates authority to the executive to make rules. The courts interfere with policy, and so on and so forth. I mean, the circumstances under which the various branches are doing the other branches' jobs now are legion. So we don't have a rule of law really in this country. It's certainly in that respect. And so this provision is basically just trying to take us back to zero again, which is to say, legislature shall do this, executive shall do that, courts shall do this, and there shall be no delegation of authority from one to the other to do the other's job. You just can't do that. Now, keep in mind that we've already disempowered the state. We've already flipped the default. We've already prohibited force. So the amount of policy making the state's going to do is very, very small, almost non-existent. And so one might make the case that we've already dealt with this problem. But for good measure, this is one of the current problems in our current system of government. And so I thought it was worthwhile to say explicitly, we're going back to a separation of powers that is strict and distinct, and no more of the shenanigans that goes on right now.
Yeah, and to help people kind of understand this a little bit better, currently, the legislature creates statutes and regulations. The executive will create orders and decrees. These are
actually the executive does the regulations for the most part.
Right, because that's what regulation is kind of giving the power to the executive to go ahead and add to that list, subtract from that list without passing more law. Right, and that's how it currently is right now. Because what I'm getting at is who makes the law. Well, currently all of them do, and that's kind of
that's correct. That currently all of them make the law. Most of the rules that we are actually subject to come from not from bills, not from statutes, but from all of the subordinate legislation, the regulations, the guidelines, the directives, the orders, the decisions that these people make from day to day to day, and from the policy that the courts spin out. Right? So this is not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And I'll give a practical real world example that we're about to get into here in Canada. Hate laws.
Oh, sure.
So the legislature will say hate laws are illegal, or hate speech is illegal, and that's basically where they'll end it. The executive will say, well, these groups create hate, and they will apply that list as they see fit. And then the current courts will say, well, that word's illegal. So what's coming up is the whole hate speech thing. It's going to be determined by all of these, and it's going to be applied to you by all of these.
Right.
And that's exactly one of the things you would stop. It wouldn't be that way.
That's right. So let's just take that example. In the new Alberta under this constitution, number one, they wouldn't be able to do it that way as you've just described. However, that problem just doesn't come up also, because if you go back to the beginning of this constitution, there's no use of force by the state to do anything other than to prevent your use of force. Hate speech is not the use of force. It's not a threat. You're not threatening to assault somebody. It is simply an expression of the fact that you really don't like somebody or a particular group. You are allowed to do that. In a free country, you are allowed to hate other people, and you are allowed to say that you do. There's no force involved. As long as there's no force involved, the state has no power to use force to prevent you from doing that. They cannot censor you. So even without this separation of powers idea, that's just not going to come up. As in the U.S., there's no such thing as hate speech that's prohibited, because they have interpreted their freedom of speech in that way. That's going to be the case in the new Alberta as well.
No, I like that a lot, because here's what maybe some people don't understand, and this could be one of the good reasons why you're going to vote for separation. Right now, they're bringing forward some new hate laws in Canada, and Barbara Perry is part of this. And I've watched her give testimony in a court where she listed off what she would consider to be extremism. If you're one or more, she said, one or more, not all, but one or more. And some of the characteristics that she listed off was a Christian, conservative, and white, and other things like that. But let's just focus on the conservative one. Well, you're now going to make the speech of your opponents, Conservative Party, illegal if those kind of things move forward. And that's one way of a tyranny to completely become legal under your current system. That wouldn't be possible under New Alberta, right?
Not possible under this constitution. These are the kinds of powers that the state simply does not have. Going back to the flipping the default, the state is able to do only those things that are expressly listed, and this is not one of those things. The Constitution says that the state cannot use force to prescribe behavior of its citizens.
Right.
And this is a behavior. Unless you are using force against somebody else or threatening them with force, the state cannot govern your behavior, period. And therefore, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, well, Barbara Perry certainly said whatever she wants. And one of the things that she listed also was opponents of the current government. So great way to make sure there is no change in government. It's pretty crazy.
This is the situation that we are in because we have the Constitution that we do. Right. So it's getting to be extreme now. Yes, but it is all made possible. It is permissible under the Constitution that we have, that we're in this mess. And that's one of the reasons why the Constitution needs to be substantially changed. The model has to be different.
And here's the restriction in government. Legislature cannot delegate lawmaking to any other branch or person.
Right.
It stays where it needs to stay. That's what their purpose is.
They cannot delegate substantive lawmaking authority, and they cannot delegate adjudicative authority. That is, cases will be decided by courts and nowhere else, not the executive. You can't create a tribunal to take the power away from the elected judge to hear the case.
I think Detective Helen Gruss would have preferred to be in a court instead of a tribunal for her matter.
Right.
Now, here's another big catch-all. This is going to cover things like treaties, crown land, and other transitions. Number 12.
Right. Well, so the treaty thing. So the treaty thing, and the Aboriginal rights question is dealt with earlier when we say that this is just one of the things that the state's not able to do. You can't distinguish between people based upon your lineage or any other kind of criteria, and you can't treat people differently based upon any of those kind of considerations. So Aboriginal rights is a thing that will end in the new Alberta under this constitution. You cannot have two different tiers of people with different kinds of rights. That is contrary to a free society. It is contrary to blind justice. It is contrary to the rule of law. So it cannot be. So what do you do? What's the transition? The transition I'm suggesting is that those Indian bands that have reserves, you take those reserves and you give title to a plot on those reserves to every individual who belongs to that group. So they actually have property like other people have off reserve, and that's the end of it. Finish. Now they're operating on the same basis as everybody else, and then we carry on. But there's a whole lot of other Crown land out there, and one of the problems is that Alberta, like other provinces in Canada, is mostly owned by the Crown. 60%, over 60% of Alberta is owned by the Crown. Okay. That can't be. That is not a free country. So we have to find a way to remove the Crown. Well, number one, we hopefully won't have a Crown. If Alberta becomes independent, the Crown will have no role. But the government can't be left with owning and operating and controlling all this land. 60% of Alberta, that means the government will control over half of what happens in Alberta. So there has to be some transition to a different system. Now, this is not an easy question. There are some choices, but the choices have obstacles, right? So, for example, you could say, well, let's just auction it all off. Auction it off to private people, because private people should own it. And I agree with that. All the land should be in private hands. That's the nature of a free country. However, if you auction it off, then most of Alberta might end up in a few wealthy hands because they are able to outbid everybody. So that's not ideal. Instead, you could say, all right, well, how about we just lottery it off? Like, we'll just randomly assign title to plots of land to every Alberta citizen. Everybody will get a plot of land that's right now owned by the Crown. Okay. That's something attractive about that. But the problem is that then your fortunes depend upon the random luck of the draw. You might end up with oil sands country, or you might end up with some lousy scrap of bush that's worthless. Okay. So that's not ideal. You want something that's fair, that gives everybody, that sort of an equal shot at controlling the wealth that is their heritage. So what else you got? So we could, if you like, have a random system of assigning pieces of land that have a comparable market value. Like, let's go through the process of dividing the Crown land up and valuing it, and then making sure everybody gets something of comparable value. Well, you could do that. That's not bad. But the process of valuing and cutting it up needs to be done probably by the government. And so there's a danger there that process will be interfered with and might be corrupt. If you can ensure that it wasn't, then that's a possibility. Another possibility is that you leave the control or the supervision of the land in government hands, but at the same time, you give to each citizen a beneficial property interest in it, so that they are the ones that profit from the revenue that results from the use of the land. Well, that's not bad either, except that you're still leaving the government in control of the land. And that's the kind of thing this Constitution is trying to get rid of. Okay? So you have these various kinds of choices. I don't think that I've discovered the perfect one yet. Something along these lines has to be done. The one thing we know is that it can't be left the way it is, because at the moment, the government dominates what happens there and the revenues that it produces, and that won't do.
There's a couple I will throw at you just as to noodle around a little bit. When Monopoly board game rules, which is first one to land on there gets to purchase at a fair price. If they choose not to, it goes to auction. So that could be one. So whoever is already there, start with them. and another one where there is nobody there, staking. So early in the US, you could stake your ground and then you have to develop it. So you give it a period of time to develop it, like build a home, start your farm, and then it's yours after so many years. Again, this is going to be part of the transition question, exactly how this will work. I really love the idea of taking it away from crown or government or state, finding a way to get it down to the individual.
Right. The staking or claiming, first to arrive makes sense in a sort of a frontier situation, but I fear that it might, produce a kind of free for all in a situation where the people are already all in the province, and if it's simply a race to put your feet on a particular plot of land, then you're inviting some conflict there. And so I get where you're trying to go, and I agree with it. I'm just not sure that that's the right kind of process in this different kind of context.
Well, in all fairness, there's very little areas that are not already claimed. Mostly parks, I guess, national parks and stuff like that. But this could be a good way to get people out of the cities. Get one stake.
Sure.
You can't stake multiple areas. They're all boundaried. And if you want to get out of the city and start your farm or homestead or just to get out, you may have an opportunity.
But if you created a requirement that people develop it within a certain period of time and how, then suddenly you've also given some official the authority to say, yeah, you're not doing that right, and we don't like the way you're doing this, and we're not going to allow that to be, but this is good. So in other words, what we're trying to get away from is government supervision of things. And so the idea makes sense, but the government role in it doesn't make sense to me. So let's keep searching.
There's lots of different ways to slice this one up, and it might be a whole regional thing. Let the region figure out how they want to do it, and that could be another way to get it done instead of the government or the new government.
Whenever, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yep.
I'll be more polite. You go ahead.
the danger in all of these things is this: as soon as you go to the place of saying, well, the following thing needs to be done together, as soon as you do stuff together, that means you are giving some authority the authority to do the thing. And that's usually some form of government. Even if it's not strictly speaking the Alberta state, it is some form of external authority. We're trying to minimize the degree to which individuals have to rely upon that. So no doubt in the transition on this question, there's going to have to be some kind of authority to transition the thing. No doubt. But let's not assume too much about who the authority is and the good faith that they bring to the problem, because that's one of our Achilles heels.
For sure. And as we're looking at this map, it would be basically turning this whole thing yellow.
Yes.
Now, protected areas, is that something you address? Because again, that provides some sort of enforcement.
Right. Oh, and exactly, and that will be one of the issues for Albertans to decide. So, do you want to? These protected areas are also Crown areas. They're just that designation just means that the Crown's not going to allow mining there, for example. You could include these areas in the areas that you're going to transition to private hands. If Albertans decided they didn't want to do that, then they could decide that together. But then the question is, okay, so how are you going to handle the property? How are you going to handle the property without giving authority to your state? Because we're trying to get away from that. So we'll leave that question with you.
Yep, and that's what the transition period is for, is to kind of answer those questions. And then, like I kind of suggested, it could also vary by region. Like they could come up with their own version of what works for them.
Well, yes, but again, you don't want to give power to the mob, and there's a mob in each region, right? So the power there's both a good thing about majority rule and a bad thing. And if the majority in a region decides they want to do things in a certain way, okay, but maybe they shouldn't be putting together rules that subject the minority or the dissenters from a regime that the dissenters don't agree with.
Yeah, and I see you have some suggestions here. Distribute to each citizen a parcel of comparable market value. You're trying to address it, but it's still this will be one of those that like the citizenship question. When we
Yes,
get
and I'm
down
not. I'm
to
not. Yeah, I put out a couple of ideas that are maybe feasible, but I'm not. I'm not 100% happy with either one of them just yet. So maybe there's another possibility.
excellent. Now, do you let's see amendment? Let's get to amendment, and then I'll get into my next question about
Okay,
like a constitutional convention or something. Like there's going to be another step after that.
of course.
But amendments. So you make them
Right.
difficult on purpose.
Yes,
2/3.
you make them difficult, but not impossible, right? You don't want it set in stone so that it cannot never be changed, because then you're subjecting all the future generations to a decision that you made in the present, and you don't want those decisions to be easily changed. Otherwise, it's not effective with the Constitution. But you don't want to make it impossible. So the suggestion that I'm making is that amendments can be made with 2/3 approval in both houses of the legislature and in a referendum of citizens over the age of 18 alive at the time. So if you have that kind of consensus, then fair enough.
I like how you had to add alive at the time. So deceased people can vote. It's not like the Republic down south.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, and what would be an amendment? Just anything that's not currently here.
Anything
Not
that's
an
not currently
interpretation.
there, something about the Constitution as it's drafted that you want to change. I mean, one would like to think that once you get to a final version, that it's pretty damn good, and there wouldn't be very many things to change, especially because it will not consist of a whole bunch of rules to deal with things that they exist in the present, but instead they will consist of these of principles and architecture, so as to set you up to govern in a certain way, in a way that is based upon the freedom of every individual to decide their lives for themselves without interference from other people. If you establish those principles, then hopefully there will be no real need to amend it. But nevertheless, there is always going to be the possibility of something that you haven't seen or overlooked, or something that went wrong. So you need to have that possibility in the back pocket.
Now, one section I didn't see in here, which is great, is a notwithstanding clause where the government can
Yeah,
override
no.
all of this if they determine it's necessary.
Right. So we have a notwithstanding clause, as people will know, in the charter that allows legislatures to enact things without regard to sections 2 and 7 to 15 of the charter. Now, the reason to have that in there, and I'm not against that, the charter version of the notwithstanding clause, but that's because the effect of the charter is to give ultimate power to the court. This Constitution does not do that. This Constitution, by having elected judges, by having short terms, and by limiting the powers of the state in the Constitution, tries to avoid empowering the court. And you don't want to empower the legislature to breach the Constitution that you've just put together, that ensures the freedom of the individual. Right? The freedom of the individual comes first, and you don't want to be ruled by the courts, to the contrary, and you do not want to be ruled by the legislature, to the contrary. Okay, so that is the untouchable elements of this. The individual is the one that rules over his own life, and you don't want any part of the state to be able to decide to the contrary.
I like that a lot. And the one more that I, off the top of my head, that's come up a little bit is there's no supremacy of God. And that could be because you're not creating a hierarchy of power. There is no power.
There is no power. The power lies within the individual. And if the individual is governed by God, then great. I mean, so be it. Maybe that's the way it ought to be. But you don't need to say that in the Constitution, because the state is disempowered. And therefore, those decisions are held by the individual.
Right, and because I noticed that pretty quickly, because the charter, starts off with that, but it's also establishing a hierarchy. It's also establishing a power hierarchy there.
Yes, and the problem with that is, as with much of the rest of the charter, because it doesn't explain what it means, people, and especially those with power, people in the government and people in the courts, can put on those words the meaning that they prefer. And therefore, all you've done in this hierarchy is empowered the people you want to disempower. So there's no reason to do that.
No, it makes sense totally now because this is a new structure. People got to kind of wrap their minds around this.
Right.
There is no power other than the individual's power. And when it's that way, then yeah, you're absolutely governed by however you want to be governed, whether you're religious or not. That's implied because the power isn't being handed to another group.
Exactly so. Right.
Now, what are some, before we jump to the constitutional, and I'm glad you stuck around, and maybe another 10 minutes and we can wrap this up.
Sure.
Before we jump into the Constitutional Convention, which would be basically the transition period as we're hammering all these questions out, what is some of the pushback you've received on this part?
Two types, and not explicitly, but I think people are challenged by the fact that we're not just going with an established kind of constitution and adding more rights to it. Like, yeah, the one we have has some problems. It's missing a few things. Let's add some things in to list these rights that the government can intrude upon. That doesn't work for the various reasons we talked about. So you have to be willing to go to a different place, a different kind of model, a different constitutional architecture. People will find that difficult. And I think people have been challenged at trying to absorb what this is really describing, what the model consists of. So that's the first one. And the second one is that in conjunction with that, this is maybe just a variation on a theme. I expect some people will find that some of these provisions are maybe a bridge too far. Like this is radical freedom. This means, yes, this means the government cannot tell you what to do and cannot tell your neighbors what to do. Yes, it is on your head. Yes, there will not be a state-sponsored mandatory pension plan. Yes, there will be no rules about bicycle helmets on bikes. Yes, there will be no rules about this and that and the next thing. Yes, it means that the state will not provide you with medical care. Yes, it means that the state will not provide your children with education and tell you what it is that they must learn. This is all for you to do on your own with your neighbors and your friends and your family. Together, you will do it. You will not do it by being dictated to by the state. That is startling to a lot of people. But if they really mean what they are saying, at least what I'm saying, which is, no, they're fed up with the way things are and they want to be free. Great. So what do you mean? If you really mean that, then this will work. It will not work to take the model that you're used to and, fiddle with the words and add a few rights and add a limitation or two, because the people who are in power under the Constitution as it exists do not respect the limitations that the document expresses. They are not subject to those limitations. If you take the state as a whole, now I mean the whole thing, all the branches together, the courts, the legislature, the executive, all together, there is nothing that they cannot do. Nothing. And they are not subject to limitations. And if all we do to the existing Constitution is, add a few more rights or express a few more ideas, put a limitation in there, that does not limit the power of the state. And that's the first thing that you want to do. You want to get out from under the thumb of the state, and that means you have to think differently. And that's what this Constitution is trying to do.
Yeah, and to Albertans, we have a recent example of what you're talking about here. The modification to the Bill of Rights was supposed to make it stronger, and it kind of sort of did, except for they also added the notwithstanding clause, demonstrably justified. They added that get out of jail free card for the state as well. So even though you thought it was going to be ironclad, turns out that was also an opportunity for them to put in the out for the state.
Exactly so. It's a very good illustration of the whole idea. Here's one of the assumptions that I think people have to get out of their heads. The state cannot be assumed to act in good faith. The people who govern you, you must assume that they will not honor the ideas in the Constitution. Okay? If you take those two assumptions, then the whole task changes, because now you are writing the Constitution defensively. You are trying to protect that which is yours, instead of assuming that the people who rule over you will act in your best interests. They do not act in your best interests. Now, there are exceptions here and there, but what we've seen through history, and especially in the past little while, is that people do not respect the limitations in constitutions. You have to design a constitution. Let's put it this way. You often hear people saying, especially in the US, but even in Canada, saying, we need politicians and bureaucrats and courts who will honor the Constitution. They must honor the Constitution. Okay? That's a waste of breath. If you have a constitution that can be dishonored, then it will be dishonored. You must have a constitution that is impossible to dishonor, because the people who are in power are not, generally speaking, honorable. And you must assume that's the kind of person you're going to get. Again, there are exceptions. I don't mean every single person, but as a general rule, you cannot assume that people will honor the ideas in the Constitution. You must draft it so that it cannot be breached. And instead of expecting the best, you must expect the worst from the people who have power over you.
And I'm going to give a small example of that we do right now. People don't really understand this. Maybe on the legal side you do. But when you say your honor to a judge, you're not acknowledging their power. You're reminding them that they're supposed to be doing this with honor. Because not everybody's honorable all the time. So you're basically 1,000 times a day reminding that judge, you're here on your honor. And some people kind of see that as accepting the power. It's not, that wasn't the intent of that.
Right. Well, let's put this another way. If we could depend upon the people who rule over us to be honorable and wise and act in good faith, then we wouldn't need a constitution. We could just pick somebody and say, look, you're honorable and wise and act in good faith. You just decide what we should all do, because you have our best interests at heart and you know best. So carry on. Okay. We don't believe in that, and for good reason. So we have a constitution, and yet we have a constitution and say, honor the Constitution. Okay. Well, you've just undermined the whole project. You've got to have a constitution that doesn't allow it to be dishonored. And that's not an easy thing to do, but that's what must be done. Otherwise, you are going to have a continuation of the problematic system that we have right now.
Well, Bruce, thank you very much for putting in this work. Alberta didn't pay you for this. You're just kind of putting forward your ideas. You wrote it down and you're sharing it. You're getting out on podcasts to provide it. And you're coming to Alberta in the next couple of days.
Yes, yes, indeed. Right.
So people want to come.
I hope to see you then, Jason.
Yeah, we'll find some time, because I'm definitely going to see you Friday night, but we'll see you the rest of the time. It's pretty hectic and crazy, and there's a lot of people to go see, but I'll definitely see you Friday night. But if people want to see you, they can go to that We Unify, come shake your hand, and maybe ask some more questions. I'm sure you'll be happy.
That would be great. I'd love to see them.
Excellent, Bruce. Thank you so much for giving us an extra hour. So this is 2 hours total on this subject. I'm going to package it together and get it out there. But Bruce, thank you so much.
And thank you, Jason. Thank you for talking to me about this. I value it very much, and I appreciate you getting these questions out to the people of Alberta who matter. Thanks.
I appreciate you too, and my audience as well. They're full of good questions, and I'm sure we'll get some more. So maybe after you're down here for a bit, maybe in a few more weeks, we'll bring you back to see what people had to say after watching all of this.
Terrific.
Thank you, Bruce. You have a safe flight, and we'll see you Friday.
Sounds good. See you then.
Here, my friend. Bye. there you are, Alberta. You have a lot more to think about. We covered some bases. Not everything is resolved. There's going to be a constitutional convention, a transition period. Alberta's going to have its say. But I think there's a really good starting point, because I do agree with his position that we shouldn't just try and tweak and fix what doesn't work already. That's kind of a fool's errand. And this is an opportunity, if we get there, to actually do it very differently. It does feel uncomfortable to a lot of people because they don't understand what it means. But the more you learn about it, the better it starts to make sense, right? Like term limits. Why is that so important? Smaller periods of time, 3 years. Why is that so important? It's because you don't want professional politicians in there. See what they've done already. The longer that they're in there, the bigger the relationships they make, and the more that they control certain things like the laws. So it's headed in the wrong direction, especially when you take a look at what the hate speech stuff is coming together at. Look at that as a great example of exactly what you do not want your government for. But thank you all very much for being here. It was a long one for you, but I think it was necessary. So thanks for sticking around. Love you all very much. God bless.